Shalom. I remember learning that that's Hebrew for hello and goodbye and peace. This is how Jews greet each other, and I find that meaningful. Shalom comes from the Hebrew root shalem, that means whole. So it's describing a state where all elements are kind of in an integrated harmony together. And Jewish tradition is very deeply invested in our wholeness. When we eat, when we pray, when we study, when we grieve, our liturgy climaxes in this idea. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom. We see a kind of harmonious integration in the cosmos beyond, and we seek that between us and within us. When we connect to each other personally, for the last 2,000 years, my question to you has not been, what are you up to these days? What's happening? It's been, ma shlomcha? How's your shalom? How's your wholeness? You in harmony in all aspects of your life? In this day and age, there are so many things that are pulling us out of wholeness. We are experiencing stress at epidemic levels. And many of us are seeking to find the wisdom to a way of life that can pull us back in. Dr. Daniel Siegel is a clinical professor of psychiatry at the UCLA School of Medicine and executive director of the Mindsight Institute. And he recommends shalom. When we're in that state, which the Greeks called eudaimonia, a state of harmony with our own nature, with all other human beings, and with the planet, the most rigorous scientific studies show that we're happier, we're healthier. And it may not be surprising to learn that in Old English, the root of the word that means whole also gives us the words healing and health. Shalom is good for us. And what's really beautiful, I think, is besides cultivating a mindfulness and an appreciation of shalom in Jewish tradition for millennia, our heritage has developed a technology for bringing it into our lives. And neuroscience today is giving us a new language in which to appreciate the value of this healing power. So before we go to the science, let's get a taste of the rabbinic sense of shalom. Imagine, if you will, the earth before the rain. The skies above are heavy with these clouds, and the air is filled with anticipation. The waters above that are waiting to fall, and the waters around us in the lakes and the rivers have been aching for each other ever since they were separated on the second day of creation, say the rabbis. The shamayim are longing for the mayim. And so the rain falls. And the waters from above and below are interpenetrating. And the earth is soaking up the moisture into the soil. And the gentle music of the raindrops is soothing all of the creatures. There is this sensual integration of the waters. And we feel it. The relief, the flow, a sense of connectedness. I love how attuned the rabbis are to this natural integration in the world beyond and the way it resonates for us within. I find it charming and meaningful and instructive and reassuring, as though we understand that where there is this harmonious kind of balance in the world beyond, we know it's attainable inside too, because there's this resonance. And I found that I'm not alone in feeling this way. Many years ago, as a Jewish educator, I was moved when psychologist friends of mine, including even professors of psychology, were seeking me out for counsel when they went through personal loss. Somehow, Jewish stories and rituals and ideas about the nature of life and death provided a kind of support for their healing journey that all their clinical training did not provide. And for the past 5 years, I've been learning in their territory, studying trauma healing techniques that are emerging from the conversation between contemporary neuroscience and psychology. What I've found striking, though not entirely surprising, is how much resonance there is between ancient Jewish wisdom about navigating stress and healing from loss and building resilience, and the most cutting-edge research in neuroscience that's revealing new wisdom about what's good for human well-being. So, I'm a rabbi, not a neuroscientist, but take a trip with me. That same Dr. Dan Siegel offers us a handy model of the human brain. So I want us to be able to look at what integration looks like in this sense. You can do this with me. This would be your spinal cord that carries in sensory data from our body into the brain. It turns out that's most of the messages in our nervous system. This is the feeling of tefillin on our arm and the sound of the shofar. Here's the brainstem. This is the most ancient part of our brain that controls instinctive survival responses. It has those neurons, and bodily functions, so breathing, heart rate, digestion. Your thumb, if you fold it in, is the limbic system. This is where it gets interesting and personal. This is our felt sense of here and now. This is emotion and attachment and motivation and evaluation and memory, all weaving together. This is where positive associations with Bubby's chicken soup are formed. And then if you fold over your fingers, this is where the functions that we associate with being human beings, made in the image of God, are happening. Right? This is logic and language and creativity and meaning-making. And this is the integrated brain. So this is the state that our brain is in most of the time, unless something happens that sends us into the instinctive or emotional parts of our brain. So we're triggered by something, and the brainstem or the limbic system take over. And when that happens, we want to bring back the rational part of our brain. So we do that by doing something that pulls us together. How do we know when we're back together? Well, if you look at your model of the brain, these two fingers in the middle, you'll notice, are touching the palm, right? And the thumb on the inside. This is the middle prefrontal cortex. It is the most highly integrative part of the brain. It's touching all of the systems. That's where they come together. And we know that all kinds of regulation that exist, regulation of thought, regulation of attention, regulation of emotion, regulation of our interactions with other people, all of them require the integrative fibers of the brain that connect the widely separated areas one to another. So how do we bring on this state? Well, we can do it by bringing in emotion and physical sensation and higher awareness of where we are in the here and now, and language. It's a template of Jewish ritual. Right? Think about Shabbat. So Shabbat begins with our consciousness of the natural world or a logical map. When will the sun set? And then we bring in our body through mudras, movements, meditative movements that we now know have calming effects on the nervous system, and touch with loved ones, maybe as they bless us or hold us. And then our visual sense is engaged as we kindle candles, not just one, but two, in a way that kind of opens us up. And then we fulfill a very abstract kind of conceptual commandment. Remember the Shabbat. Zachor et HaShabbat. How do you fulfill that conceptual commandment? The rabbis offer us, imbibe a mildly intoxicating substance. Recite ancient words, right? And let lines blur. It calms us down. And then we eat. And even if it's not Bubby's chicken soup, the food somehow feels special. Challah is integrative of earth, air, fire, water, memory, meaning. And the presence of friends and family around us nourishes body and soul. And we talk together. We remember our life experiences from the week. We may talk about the meaning of life. And we sing. And when we sing, we feel our own voice blending into this collective vibrational harmony that enhances our metabolism. So this is something we're doing that's going back to affecting the brainstem. And we're also co-regulating each other's nervous systems. So we fall sound asleep that night. And when we wake up the next morning, it's to a quieter world, because Shabbat is also about what we bring out of the picture so that we can be in this fully, where we're all in a kind of rhythm with each other. It's an altering and restorative experience. It's a kind of integrative spa for the mind, body, spirit. Yeah? And I realize that not all people have this experience of Jewish ritual or Jewish tradition as being holistic and healing. I think that's because we often do it wrong. We see it as theirs and not ours. We are so worried about being on the right page, saying the right word in the right key at the right moment. We're too self-conscious to enjoy it. We have gears that are disconnected now between being Jews, the people of the book, and Jews, the people of lox and bagels. When the truth is that the power of our tradition has been the ability to integrate these aspects of human experience for centuries. And to let that magic of their weaving together wash through us. This is my Zaidi, Mordechai Yehudele Bernstein Halevi. He survived the Holocaust. He suffered devastating losses that he was never able to speak about with his family. Every spring, he took upon himself the task of grating the maror, the bitter, bitter herbs that would be consumed at the Passover Seder. He would grate it with his bare hands. And if you think onions are strong, this was real horseradish, the vapors burned his nostrils and his face turned red and tears streamed out of his eyes. And at the Pesach Seder itself, when the time came to fulfill the mitzvah of tasting the bitterness of where we were, of eating the maror, he didn't fulfill the mitzvah in the way that many of us do, by taking the tiniest possible sliver of maror and bathing it in the sweet charoset. My Zaidi accepted an invitation that Jewish ritual was offering him, and he ate the maror by itself, raw. Enough of it that his face turned red, and the pain seared, and years of uncried tears poured down his cheeks. This was his reign that a Jewish ritual offered him, a release that would allow him to feel integrated when he emerged from this experience. Jewish ritual is meant to be transformative. We're not meant to emerge the same from a Jewish ritual as we were when we entered it. And the Seder is just one example of a multi-sensory, multi-generational, multi-layered ritual that in this case invites our entire nervous system to an understanding that the memory is still with us, that we have wisdom to bring into our life and give to our children, but that the trauma has passed and that we are safe and sweetly free. It's perhaps because of my family's experiences of trauma that I've always been involved and interested in healing. In college, I was pre-med and I was pre-law, and I studied physics and sociology and philosophy, and later, psychology and neuroscience. And what I've found is that all of these lines of inquiry and practice lead me back to the well of Jewish wisdom, story and survival wisdom. And I'm so grateful that we have this. I'm so grateful that Jewish ritual in my life, and no amount of study, is what connects me to the natural world and the inner world. I find that I'm aware of the sunset and nightfall, the beginning and ending times of Jewish holidays, and yahrzeits, and the cycle of the moon, and the seasons of the years with their energy and their history. Each ritual experience that's part of my life is a kind of oasis of integration. And I'm so thankful for being reminded what integration feels like, because that's what helps me peel my gaze away from the screen and into the waiting eyes of my children. And at other times, into my inner world, where I can attune to the question, Ma shlomech? How's our wholeness? I think we need this. We live in a state of disconnect and overwhelm. Our attention is pulled in so many different directions at once in this rapidly changing world where we are afraid to miss a step that we risk forgetting what integration even feels like. And remember that scene in the world before the rain? Remember that aching between the waters, upper and lower? Don't we feel that in our lives? The tension and the disconnect and the disintegration? That yearning for wholeness? So the good news is that we have an extraordinary technology to bring shalom back among us and within us. And for the past 3,000 years, it's been helping us be a more resilient, creative, and self-aware people. So, ma shlomcha? How's your wholeness? Your wholeness is important to the Jewish people and the world. There is a harmony within that is waiting for us. And Jewish ritual offers us an invitation to open up the channels and dissolve whatever gets in the way of its reaching us. And when we accept this invitation, we restore to Jewish ritual its power to restore us. Shalom. Thank you.
Rabbi Noah Kushner reminded me of the verse in Exodus where Moses stumbles across the burning bush. He stops, he looks, and he asks, Madua? Why isn't this burning up? It was an amazing childlike curiosity that stopped. He didn't dismiss it as a mirage in the desert heat. And by doing so, he passed the test, the ultimate one-question interview. God needed to know if Moses is really the one who could actually lead his people out of slavery. And where everyone else saw a narrow place and impassable darkness, Moses could see that maybe there's another possibility. When we incorporate that kind of wonder into our lives, we stop and we look. And we can see bushes that are burning but not being consumed. And we can see the first flowers of spring. And we can see that sly smile or quiet wink. And we can possibly see how people are making meaning for themselves.